to the Infinity Bros podcast, the only podcast that's perfectly balanced as all things should be. My name is Isaac Edlin. I'm your host tonight. And with me, I have one dear fellow Infinity Bro. It is Jarret Curtis. How you doing, Jarret?
I'm doing great. I think that might be the first time in my life that somebody's called me dear. And I know it's close to Valentine's Day, but you do know I'm a married man, Isaac. There's a line.
I do, yeah. But we need to get a little bit of flirting in on this podcast because I don't hear your sultry tones enough on the Infinity Bros podcast. So I have to draw it out as long as possible.
Absolutely. We're having a moment here, and look, just, hey, ignore the rest of these listeners. It's just you and me, Isaac.
Love that. But it is very nice to have you on the podcast, though. I think it's been a while. The last time we talked was probably the beginning of 2023.
Okay.
On the podcast. So, we are good friends, and we do talk on a regular basis.
I'm going to just say it because we recorded this episode already, or a version of this episode. It will be forever the lost Infinity Bros episode.
So sad.
But yeah, other than that, it has been a hot minute since you and I have been on an episode together. And it is always a joy to be you and me. And again, we are two very good boys. We are puppies trapped in grown men's bodies. And so you are going to listen to an episode where Isaac and I agree on everything, and we are cordial, and we are so incredibly nice, and there's not a single hot take. So if you're ready,
maybe we'll even agree more than Zane agrees with me.
Oh my gosh, I'm ready for that.
I mean, yeah, that's just imagine society if we all agreed as much as Zane agrees.
As much as Zane says. Yeah, to echo what you said, especially the part where you said this.
Oh man, good times. But you can check out previous episodes of the Infinity Bros podcast to find out what I'm talking about. For you new listeners, welcome to the Infinity Bros. We're a group of 6 guys, rotating cast, who review things pop culture related, mostly MCU related, but we review a lot of other things too. We're going to talk about a few other things, but we're also going to talk MCU today with Echo, which just dropped earlier last month now. I was going to say this month, but it is already...
At this point, it's February.
It's already a third of the way through February. So we are very far along in the year of 2024 already. So
we're just cruising, boys.
We're cruising. But we're going to drop our reviews of Echo, the miniseries that dropped on Disney Plus, as well as a few movies that we've caught over the past couple months. So make sure you check out the Infinity Bros at theinfinitybros.com, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and a very new place that Jarret's going to tell us a little bit more about, Drip.
Yeah,
what is the deal with Drip, Jarret?
To my understanding, it is a platform for a bunch of different collectors who sort of live stream auctions and little games, and they do... it's like a way to connect communities of collectors together. And you also have the option of buying from other collectors and stuff. I have experienced this firsthand just from the MTG aspect, which is sort of the new adventure that the Infinity Bros are going on together. Robbie is fully committed to this. He's invested and is deep diving into Drip's MTG streams and doing a lot of giveaways and auctions and stuff there. So yeah, it is buck wild. It's a pretty cool platform.
Yeah, and from what I understand, it's very similar to Whatnot, which I've seen floating around on a lot of different collector, sites and accounts and stuff like that. So, but yeah, very soon you're going to be seeing Infinity Bro Robbie's beautiful bearded face all over Drip. So.
And it's phenomenal setup. We talked about this a little bit, but there's the streamer setup that everybody desires to have. And I've never seen anyone do it as good as Robbie. Which if it feels like I'm gassing him up, I'm not. I'm saying that because I despise him and I'm mad that I don't have that setup.
Very jealous. Yes.
Yeah.
I can see it in Jarret's eyes right now. He's very jealous.
So I'm not promoting him. I'm dissing him. And I hope that comes through. I don't want you to think I like this person.
But stay on the watch for that. It's going to be cool. We're going to get a lot of MTG. I mean, if you guys have been paying attention to our TikTok at all, you know that we're basically an MTG like podcast group function.
I don't
right
know
now.
how. I feel like this is my fault. I don't know what I awakened in Robbie, but it was like
You did something.
Yeah, I like kicked a rock on a snowy day and like it turned into an avalanche. That is just Robbie's like obsession with MTG.
Basically, yeah. So, I mean, our TikTok has grown very quickly. We've got like over 11,000 followers on TikTok right now. And
Mhm.
I'd say a good 50% of them are from our MTG efforts, which, you
Right.
know, we didn't expect that when we started this Infinity Bros journey nearly 5 years ago. But
Right.
here we are, and we're going to roll with it.
I'm gonna spoil this now because I feel like we are working on improving not just obviously the TikTok aspect of it and like the short form video stuff, but with everything going on with Drip as well, and then our Magic Monthly, we're trying to figure out what we want to do with that. But one of the things that we have going forward is we want to get some Commander games in as the sets drop. So obviously the big one right now is Murders at I always want to say Markov. That's a different thing. Murders at Karlov Manor. We were not quick enough to get in on that, but the production that we're putting together for Fallout is probably the biggest thing we've ever done as the Infinity Bros, with this joint effort that we've made between me, Robbie, potentially Isaac, Zane, and Mark on that episode. We don't know yet, but yeah, big stuff coming from the Infinity Bros as far as the MTG market.
I'm excited. And big stuff coming from Robbie specifically. This is you heard it here first, and I'm like whispering to the mic now because this is technically a secret, and like this is all
now we're in on the
hush.
ASMR portion of the podcast. I hope you enjoy
The
it.
ASMR portion of the Infinity Bros podcast. We have a whole segment dedicated to that nowadays. But Robbie, in one of his TikToks, sang a portion of a MTG themed like cover.
Yeah.
And he is in the process of like writing a music video for it, and it like he is very excited about this.
Yeah.
So I'm also excited about this and excited to see what he's going to come up with. So I told him, I was like, I'm going to be there. Like, you just tell me what to do. I'll stand in the background and like be a dancing girl in a bikini or something like that. Like, whatever you need, I'm there.
What kind of episode are we running here, Isaac?
I don't know what kind of music video Robbie's planning. That's just like I'm here for it. So
You're gonna be twerking on the hood of a Ferrari.
no, knowing Robbie, it's all gonna be like goth girls and like some really long black over the eye hair.
You are trying to seduce me this episode, Isaac. I don't want to picture you as a goth girl.
Hey, Valentine's Day is coming up, so we got to get some seduction in the podcast.
No, Isaac,
you are probably not here for me seducing Jarret or talking about Robbie's beautiful bearded face. You're probably here to hear some reviews of some different things, including Echo. First of all, we want to get to a few animated features that Jarret and I saw and we're pretty excited about, actually. So we wanted to review them on the podcast. First of all, we're going to be reviewing Migration, which just dropped on Christmas Day in 2023. Really great animated film with some pretty awesome cast members. Kumail Nanjiani plays like the feature voice, Elizabeth Banks, Tressie Gazal, Casper Jennings, Danny DeVito. That's kind of like the main cast. And then they've also got Keegan-Michael Key, Awkwafina, Carol Kane, David Mitchell, and a few other cameos and other smaller parts. But a lot of really great voice actors in this one. And it's Illumination, which, you know, is the studio that brought us Despicable Me, The Minions,
Despicable Me 2, Despicable Me 3,
Despicable Me
3.
All of the Despicable Me's. And most recently, I was going to mention the Super Mario Bros. Movie as well.
That's right. I forgot they
very, very well, established and reputed animation studio. And it shows. Like, animation looks great. Jarret, what did you think of Migration? And you went to it with your kids, right?
Yes.
And what did they think of it?
So this was one of them that really unintentional pun here, but really flew under my radar. I did not know this was a thing until literally like we were at the movie theater and my wife was like, "Hey, we should check this out. It looks pretty cool." And so she dragged us all into the theater, and you know, I had no idea what I was getting into going in, other than this was a kids movie about ducks migrating, and I was like, it pretty much is what it says on the tin. And to be fair, what you think this movie is about it's exactly that.
Yeah.
But in saying that, despite its like quote unquote predictability, it's a phenomenal movie. It's so freaking good. The voice acting in this is incredible. And the thing that I love is like there's big names like Camille Nungiani is a rising star and has been absolutely killing it in everything that he's in. But and like Danny DeVito, I mean, cannot miss. But
Yeah, speaks for itself.
Yeah, I mean Danny DeVito is in it, so
Danny
it's like
DeVito.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
But the two kids in this, the two lesser known, the actor and actress, despite being in like one other movie accredited on IMDb, both were phenomenal. Like they both killed it. And I don't know if it's that this young lady has a New Zealand accent, but the little girl in this, I legitimately thought was the actor that plays who is the girl clone in Bad Batch?
Oh, Omega.
Omega. I thought it was the
Omega.
same actress. It is not. And like those two absolutely killed it. I thought they were phenomenal. The
Nice.
one gripe, and we've talked about this before, is I love Keegan Michael Key. I think he's a phenomenal actor. I think the bits that Key and Peele have done are hilarious. And those two guys can absolutely nail any impression that they put their mind to, except for apparently Jamaican.
Yeah.
Because Keegan Michael Key has the weirdest accent in this, and it constantly switches back and forth between like an absurd over like production of what he thinks a Jamaican accent is to like no accent at all, and it switches seemingly at random, like for no reason at all. And so, yeah, a phenomenal movie, great voice acting, amazing writing. It is very much a kids movie for kids. My boys were literally standing and screaming in the theater, which I'm sorry to the seven other people that were watching with it, but like whatever. Yeah, I'm not going to
Yeah.
apologize for how awesome my kids are.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than Keegan Michael Key's horrible impression in this movie, phenomenal. 6 out of 6.
Yeah.
I
6 out of 6. Wow.
Yeah, other than the Keegan Michael Key knocks it down about half a point or maybe a whole
Okay.
point. But
So it was a 6.5 before this, and now it's a 6.6 or
no,
6 out of 6.
it was a 6 out of 6. Now it's a
Okay. All right.
five
Gotcha.
and a half.
Yeah. So for those of you guys who don't know, we have a special rating system on the Infinity Bros that we use that Jarret just referenced.
Here on the Infinity Bros podcast, everything is ranked from a 0 to 6 point scale. 0 meaning horrible, and 6 meaning absolutely excellent. If all of the Infinity Bros rank something a 6, it gets an Infinity Snap.
So, yeah, we rate things out of 6. He rated a 5.5 out of 6, which is pretty dang high praise, especially for a movie that you knew nothing about going into it, I feel like.
And on top of it, it's made by the same company that makes every single like Facebook mom meme ever. Because we've log on to Facebook right now, look up your grandparents or your aunt who like believes in conspiracy theories, and I want you to speed run how quickly you can find a minion meme, because I bet you all the money in my bank account it's on there. So yeah, I was not expecting
very
much from
much
this.
possible. I came at it from a little different angle. I definitely took my kids to it. That's something that I enjoy doing with my two older daughters. We've been to several movies in the past year, and for some reason, the trailer for Migration was played before almost every movie we saw this year. Not sure why, but like it just was over and over and over again. So my kids were like, "Yeah, Dad, we gotta go see this movie. It's gonna be awesome."
Yeah.
And I think it was awesome. It was really fun. A lot of what you're saying though, it's very predictable. It's a kids movie. There's nothing crazy or abstract or different about this movie. It's basically what you are advertised on the cover of migration. So so if you're going in expecting anything different than that, you might want to rethink it a little bit. Overall, it was really great. Animation is top notch. Voice cast is great. Everything's great. I think I do have the same qualm about the Jamaican voice. You seem very passionate about it. I don't know if I'm quite as passionate about it. I will say, like, probably because the level of actor and voice actor that Keegan Michael Key is, it is a little weird / disappointing that he put on such a weird like performance of this.
I think that's the thing is like there's sort of two parts to this. One, when you compare it to somebody like Aquafina can only ever play Aquafina. Like she has
the same
one note and it's the same always. Yeah. And so when you have somebody to the caliber of Keegan Michael Key, who is like a master impressionist, like the dude,
like, yeah,
go watch those shorts.
Sorry. Sorry. I was going to say something and then I got a frog in my throat here. But if you didn't tell me that Keegan Michael Key was Toad in Super Mario Bros, would not have known that at all.
Killed that role.
And he's like totally different from his usual normal voice, you know?
So
like,
that's the thing is like when you have an amazing actor and you know what they're capable of and they phone it in, that's what bothers me. And like, I could not shake it because I'm like, this is one of the, like, this dude is perfect for this part, and he just completely like flipped it.
Do you think he's phoning it in, or do you think he's trying to overplay? Like he's just trying to be funny. Like he's not treating this as like a serious role. I guess maybe that's what phoning it in means to you. I don't really know.
Here's what I think happened. I think there's like the authentic Jamaican accent, which we know and we love. And I think there's like sort of in the same way that like Mel Gibson absolutely butchered the Scottish accent, there is like the Hollywood version of the Jamaican accent. And I think he was afraid of coming across as like overly stereotypical or maybe like not doing it justice. I don't know what the deal was there, but it almost felt to me like there was a number of moments where he just played it way too safe and just talked like Keegan Michael Key. And the problem was that would be fine if the whole movie was like that, or if the whole movie was like in the accent. But he switched back and forth at seemingly random times to where I was like, are we doing the accent or are we not? Because this is getting so distracting for me.
Yeah, right. I agree with you. The consistency was just wild. It was just all over the place there. But overall, I thought it was awesome. When this hits streaming, my kids will be all over it. They will be watching it every other day. I would give it a 5 out of 6. It was solid. It's not a classic. Like you're not gonna look back at this and be like, oh my gosh, Migration was like one of the best animated,
life changing.
Yeah. But it was really fun. It was a good watch. So 5 out of 6.
I need to say this because I feel like, especially with the way that we're going to talk about Disney Plus going forward, and something that like I've been talking about quite a bit is like, I feel like there is so much pressure for every movie to be like cinematically perfect. You know what I mean? Like the top quality, as best as it can be, extremely well written. And like, I've been going back and watching a lot of the movies that I loved from my childhood, right? Some of the 90s classics. And like, if I were to watch them today with a very critical eye, I would probably be harsher to them than I was as a kid.
True. Yeah.
And so I like, everything doesn't need to be a Scorsese movie. You know what I mean? You could go to a kid's movie, have it be incredibly predictable, really fun joyride, and like walk out of it going, oh, that was fun. And like, that's enough.
I think there's definitely a balance to be struck there because, you know, and especially when we talk about superhero movies, like that's kind of our bread and butter as we talk about these superhero movies and the MCU and stuff like that. Like you've got guys on our podcast like Max and Robbie who are like, this is the worst film ever. This is a 2 out of 6. Like I can't believe they made this, you know. And then we've got Mark on the other side who's like, Thor: Love and Thunder is a 6.9 out of 6. It's the best movie I've ever watched in my life. Like there's a balance to be struck between like just going to a movie, not expecting so much of it, but also just enjoying it for what it is.
Yeah.
You know, like I enjoyed Love and Thunder. Do I think it's a great movie? No. but I still had a fun time, you know? So I think there's enjoyment to be had in most movies if we stop taking them so seriously and I guess being critics of it, which here we are on a podcast reviewing it. We're literally reviewing it, but like sometimes you just got to sit back and enjoy a movie.
Right.
But yeah, that's what we got. Migration. Solid. Definitely worth a watch. I'm not sure when it's hitting streaming, but it's got to be soon because it was, I guess it was December. It was the end of December. So it might be a month or two before it hits streaming.
Take the kids. You won't regret it.
Yeah, you won't regret it. Kids will love it. Next up, another kids movie that has been on streaming since it aired. It's Leo from Netflix. Started on November 21st, I have here. Adam Sandler. This has got to be like, did he direct this too? No, he didn't direct it, but like this whole thing is his brainchild.
It screams Adam Sandler, yeah.
It's you watch this and you're like, this is all Adam Sandler. But it follows a lizard, 74-year-old lizard named Leo and his turtle friend when they decide to escape from the terrarium of a Florida school classroom of where they have been living for decades. And to be honest, this is one that like just popped up on Netflix. Didn't know anything about it. Kind of similar to your situation with Migration, where I was just like, oh, it's there.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's watch it. Like, whatever. And right away, the first scene right off the bat is singing. It's a musical.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? Like, there is no logical reason for this movie to be a musical.
You could cut every single song and it would make this probably the same, if not slightly better.
Probably the same. Other than Adam Sandler is the one behind all
Yeah, he is
like he is probably the one that's like, guys, we should make this a musical.
8 Crazy Nights didn't work. We got to do another one.
Oh my gosh. But it is very witty and charming and funny, and animation is great. You know, there's a lot of really great things about it, and it's got a lot of great voice acting as well. Bill Burr stars alongside as Squirtle, which that was another like, I don't know, just like out of body experience. Like when I heard Squirtle, I was like, this is Adam Sandler and Bill Burr. So that's animated for right next to each other. Like that tells you what you need to know about this movie.
So this is how I ended up watching the movie, because my wife turned it on for my kids. And I was in the other room doing dishes or doing laundry or something. And I had known that they were watching a kids movie. And I hear Bill Burr's voice and I go, oh crap, they switched movies. So I came running around the corner like, oh, somebody give me the remote. And it's still the kids movie. And I was like, hold on. And it's Bill Burr and Adam Sandler in like it's not like Adam Sandler's kids movies are not kids movies, right? Like he doesn't do kids movies. This is a legit kids movie, and it's good.
A legit kids movie, yeah, and it's solid. Like, despite the fact that there's singing and it's for some reason a musical for zero reason at all. Like it is very charming and heartwarming, and like Adam Sandler, I will say too, he does go overboard with the voice, which that's not surprising. Like it's Adam Sandler. But like the first, I don't know, 20-30 minutes of the movie, he really hams it up so much so that like he's almost listenable. Like you can't even understand what he's saying. But then as the movie goes on, he like kind of loses a little bit of the lizard drawl, I guess.
It just sounds like Adam Sandler.
It sounds like Adam Sandler on an SNL skit, like just being goofy. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. He starts it out so heavy, and it's like, bro, just chill out a little bit. But yeah, again, it gets a little bit more tolerable throughout the movie. Again, just heartwarming. That's one thing that I was not expecting to like this movie at all, number one. But yeah, like it's become a staple with my kids too. We've watched this like probably weekly since it came out. at least.
I'm so sorry. I would agree with you. I think it's a really good storyline. I think it's like the message is really positive. The one thing I can say about this that I can't say about Migration, you really know where you're going. Like from one moment to the next, it is an extremely predictable movie. Again, not a knock. It's, it is what it is. This movie has the weirdest Act 3 that is so out of left field. And I'm not going to spoil it because, I mean, I guess spoilers for a Netflix TV show or movie for kids.
It's
but
been out for months.
But like, there's a whole like storyline with the teacher who ends up like becoming a bad guy and kidnapping Leo for a while, and it makes no sense. It's the most
It is really wild.
But it kind of works in a fun way.
It keeps you guessing the whole time. You're like, what is happening? I don't know. You have to keep watching to figure out what's going on.
That's one of those where like in the middle of the night I was like, I imagine that, right? Like this was a fever dream. I didn't really just watch an Adam Sandler movie.
It plays as a fever dream, especially with the musical scores and stuff like that. Like, okay, the one I'm thinking of specifically is Jada. She's one of the kids that like hangs out with Leo and stuff like that. Her dad is like a skin care doctor, and he does this number when Leo goes to their house. Bears, like, you could cut out that number and it would not make a single difference in this movie. Would change a thing. And like they just did this just for funsies, and it's like, what is going on right now? It's just so weird. But yeah, I digress, man. It's a wild, wacky movie.
Yeah,
but it was a fun time overall. What'd you give it as a rating?
So I've watched it again since the last time I talked about it on the last episode, and I've officially changed my rating to a 6.9. This is the best movie ever made because of, and I have to talk about this. If you don't go watch this movie, I will absolutely forgive you. I will not hold it against you, but you have to go look up all of the kindergartner scenes because as an educator, as somebody who teaches children, this is how every single, including my own kids, this is how every single elementary kid looks to me. They all look like this. Go look up the animation style. Look up Leo kindergarten students, and you will see exactly what I mean.
Yeah. And the part in the movie where they're going through this like sequence of like, hey, these guys are, what are they in, like fifth grade or something? Fourth, fifth grade, something like that. And it's going through this sequence of them like growing up from like kindergarten to fifth grade. And it shows this picture of them as kindergartners when they're animated like that, but just like little savage, like circle heads. And then it like transitions into them now as fifth graders. And it is just, oh my gosh, I lost it. That sequence.
It's so good.
So funny. But yeah, you're totally right. Like it's exactly how it is.
Yeah, so this is like, if you've ever wondered like what my mind sees when I look at kindergartners or any elementary school kid, it's this animation style.
We'll put a link in the show notes so you guys can check it out. But
I'm watching it. I had to watch it right now. I just turned it on.
So it's a 6.9 out of 6.
6.9 out of 6. Just because of that.
Just because of that. I would also give this one a 5 out of 6. It's a solid kids movie. My kids love it. And like you said, it's a true kids movie. Like you kind of don't expect that going in with Adam Sandler and Bill Burr. But here we are. It's a real kids movie, and I don't feel bad about my kids watching it at all. Yeah. So, and it's, for as much as my kids have watched it, it still isn't getting old to me yet. It probably will get there if like my middle child is 4. And so she's like the one who's like, I want to watch this every single day. Every day she wants to watch this. And I'm like, okay, we got to like let somebody else pick movies, like spread it out a little bit. So like, so it's been tolerable. If I'm keeping it to weekly, if it were a daily movie, it would probably get old, especially with those irrelevant musical numbers.
You would drive out to Hollywood, find Adam Sandler, and commit like the most dangerous game style manhunt on him.
It might get weird. Yeah. So yeah, that's our reviews of Migration and Leo, which you weren't asking for because these are kids movies that we're reviewing on this mostly adult.
This is very
but...
this is so up your and I alley specifically
It
that
is.
like anybody else on this podcast episode, it just wouldn't work.
No,
But
no.
I'm glad you guys.
Dane probably hasn't seen either of them. Robbie probably has though. Actually, it would probably work with Robbie.
But Robbie would absolutely like just dunk on these movies for 2 hours.
Probably. Max would too.
Yeah.
I don't know. Mark, Maggie's not at that point where she's really watching movies yet.
She's probably in the Coco
Melon
Melon stage right now.
Oh gosh. We banned any baby TV shows in our house because I'm so sick of those shows.
No Sunny Bunnies, no Coco Melon, no
Sunny Bunnies. We talked about that on the last episode. Oh my gosh, Sunny Bunnies. Unfortunately, we haven't banned Sunny Bunnies yet, so my middle child still watches that. But like Coco Melon, Little Angel, Baby Finn, like all these dumb shows that are like just babies like singing songs the whole time. Like that's all they do.
You know what it is? And people don't talk about this enough, but I did a little research. I dug into this. So you know how like the US government and Argentina and a bunch of places after World War II stole a bunch of the Nazi scientists?
Mm-hmm.
They imported them into like America for like the nuclear program and all these other things. And I think some of them leaked into Netflix and started making these like as a way to test like what levels of torture can like middle-aged
parents sustain.
stand. So it's just a bunch of Nazi scientists sitting in a room going,
thank God for shows like Bluey that are more for the parents than for the children.
But the Nazis didn't defect to Australia, so this is what I'm saying, right? Like
there you go. That's Bluey is the show that keeps me sane. Like I basically will be like, if I'm getting sick of the shows the kids are watching, I'm like, we're watching Bluey. I don't care if you guys like it or not. We're watching Bluey right now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
It's a refreshing show after all the
when you've survived the desert that is like Sunny Bunnies and Coco Melon and all those.
And Netflix has a lot of awful shows, guys. Like you won't know this until your parents. Like when your kid is literally trying to watch the dumbest shows on the face of the earth, you will understand what Jared and I are talking about.
Yeah, when you survive,
it's bad out there.
You will beg for the glass of water that is Bluey.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Moving on from the children shows to a very not children show.
Yeah.
Is the worst way to describe that ever, but like we're gonna roll with it.
It's not explicit, Joe. Right? Like the way you pitch that is like in a world where everybody's dying and they all cuss all the time.
We're gonna talk about Echo. And we're going to give a spoiler warning here.
This is...
Prepare yourself.
An Infinity Bros.
Prepare yourself.
Spoiler. Warning.
Because it's okay if we spoil Migration and Leo and Bluey and Sunny Bunnies for you. But like you might get a little upset if you haven't watched Echo.
You think there's like we have a pretty diverse audience from a number of countries and states and like different backgrounds and walks of life. Do you think there's somebody who like whipped their phone across the room when we spoiled Leo? It was just like, how dare they?
I can't believe it.
Yeah. Scott. It's Scott. He just whipped his phone across.
Yeah, it's definitely Scott Higa. Yeah, he's definitely the one. We are going to be talking about Echo, which I specifically asked Jarret to come on and review with me because he's got some awesome, unique perspectives. Let's talk about the show itself a little bit. It dropped on January 10th. Synopsis says Maya Lopez must face her past, reconnect with her Native American roots, and embrace the meaning of family and community if she ever hopes to move forward. The last time we saw Maya Lopez was in Hawkeye. Mm-hmm. We got a pretty extensive peek at her character, and we got the scene of her shooting Kingpin in the eye at the end of the show.
Right.
So now we come upon Echo here, and this is the story of her and Kingpin coming to terms, basically. Yeah, a lot of big things. This is the first ever Disney Plus MCU show that is rated TV MA. So that's a big step. And it was also streamed concurrently on Hulu because of that. So that's something that is pretty unique about Echo. All of the episodes were dropped at the same time on January 10th, 5 episodes, which some interesting things just technically with that. 5 episodes is one less than kind of Marvel has done with their Disney Plus
That
MCU
is the shortest,
formula.
I believe, so far. Yeah.
Shortest, yeah, exactly. And they have done the week-to-week releases up until Echo, or actually up until What If last year, which they did. They released 1 episode per day for 9 days. And then Echo, they released all 5 episodes at once. So they're trying some different strategies. Obviously, we've kind of talked about the Disney Plus shows in the MCU to death here on the Infinity Bros podcast. But what did you think of this different approach that they took with Echo, Jarret?
I like it in that, like, I'm going to watch these at my own pace anyways. I'm not the kind of person who can binge watch a whole series in like a night or two, unless I have to for something like the podcast. So I like having it available as I'm available to watch it rather than waiting week to week. But at the same time, like, I'm not going to, like, if they were to release half of it one day, wait a week, and then release the other half of the episodes, that's fine too. But I don't know. I kind of prefer this because I'm not gonna burn myself out quickly like I know a lot of people are. So yeah, I think this was a good way to handle it. I don't like the length, and like we'll get into that more when we talk about the story and the structure of it. But the fact that it was only 5 episodes, and again, the same Disney thing that they always do, where like they say it's about an hour, it's always less, and then like so much of that time is the credits. I don't know why the credits always take up so much.
Credits are so long on these shows, like literally 10 to 15 minutes long of credits usually in these shows, which is I don't even want to watch like 3 minutes of credits.
Right.
I'm not going to sit there for 10 to 15 minutes. Like that's a little ridiculous. So, but yeah, they took a little bit different approach, and obviously that was because they've been having so much internet backlash from the other MCU Disney Plus shows, and because of that, they made Echo and some upcoming shows into Marvel Spotlight series,
Right.
which basically means that we're not going to see her as a recurring character. I mean, not exclusively, but like they're basically highlighting the fact that like, hey, this is
There's
Echo's
a good
series.
chance, we're not going to
This
see her
is
again.
relatively separate from the rest of the MCU. Like obviously it takes place in the same universe. We get some recurring characters in this show. We see Daredevil, we see Kingpin, which I'm assuming Kingpin's going to show up based on the post-credit scene.
Right.
You know, it's something that's kind of its own thing. And we might see Maya Lopez at some point down the road in the MCU, but this kind of sets up a expectation of like, hey, like don't be looking for her to return in any projects moving forward. So interesting approach, but I think honestly that's needed as well, because with the phase 4, so many new characters, so many new projects that they've been coming out with.
Much in there,
yeah, and they haven't come back to almost any of them. Right. I mean, not for good reason, because they are moving forward and they're starting to finally get back to some of them with like the movies and stuff that are coming out. But at the same time, it's like, man, I don't remember at this point, I don't remember Falcon and Winter Soldier, like what happened in that show. Like I need to go rewatch that show before Thunderbolts comes out, because Thunderbolts apparently has a lot of, recurring characters and is going to have some, and the, what's it called? The Brave New World, the Captain America movie that's coming out.
Yep.
It's been so long since we returned to those characters. So I think it's good that they're finally conceding like, hey, not every character is going to be vitally important to the future of the MCU. So we can kind of like compartmentalize that in our brains and like, set our expectations where they should be.
I think there's a lot of like, now that the superhero genre is sort of dying down, I don't think it's dead necessarily, but like it's definitely slowing. I think in order to keep it fresh and keep it in a situation where people who are not necessarily as invested as we are want to go watch the movies. They're not going to want to be required to watch like 30 miniseries that are not great and six other movies just to understand what the heck is going on. And so I think not overcrowding your, to use a cooking term, like not overcrowding your pan, so to speak, is a good idea here. I understand the level of like sunken cost fallacy where they look at these Disney Plus series and have the knee-jerk reaction of like, wow, people really don't like these. To me, the answer isn't like, okay, so if people don't like these, let's just kind of do less with Echo. That doesn't make sense to me. Like, if you're trying to get any return on investment and actually like produce a good product, you produce a good product. Like, people are asking for it. Why are you like, okay, you didn't like that we gave you less with these other series, so we're going to give you even less this time. That's somehow going to satisfy you. Like, no, figure it out, Disney.
Yeah. Some interesting creative decisions that they've made just with the overall MCU, Echo included. But, some good, some bad, just kind of how it goes. But I think overall, I feel like they did a pretty good job with this series. And we'll talk a little bit more about the pacing and some other things too. But I wanted to kind of just dive into a little bit of the background here. Obviously, like I mentioned, we get Kingpin, Wilson Fisk in Hawkeye. Maya Lopez shoots his eye out. And
does she?
Shoots his eye out. Well, yeah, exactly. We come back, and I was just gonna say he peels off this dramatic like peel off, and it's like this little red spot, like the kind of surrounding his eye.
Red line.
It's like she burnt. She just like she shot, and the gunshot just like maybe did some burn to his face or something like that. Like didn't actually like shoot his eye out because his eye is still there, which I mean, sure, granted it could be like a glass eye or something, like whatever, but like I was expecting a lot more disfigurement from Fisk than we really got, which I don't know. What was to be expected in that moment? Were you expecting him to be like really disfigured and messed up from that?
Yeah. So two things. First, I did not expect to actually see him in this series until like, I thought it was going to be a post-credit thing where like his one eye opens in the hospital bed and you can see his face is all mangled.
Right.
Like, I thought that was going to be like the cliffhanger that they leave us on.
Yeah.
And instead he just kind of shows up. Like, you get the scene where he wakes up from his hospital bed and he's fine, totally fine, nothing wrong with him.
He's fine. Yeah.
And then the next episode, he's just there and like part of the story, and they really rush into it. And he's like, psych, I'm good. Also, like, I'm back in charge and I'm rich, and here's some technology for you to help us communicate. It was so weird. The pacing of this is so bizarre. But
it is weird, yeah.
This is I have dove so deep into Echo and so deep into Daredevil. They're like some of my favorite comics. And the comic that this is like sort of based off of, there's a point where Daredevil, and they do the same thing. Daredevil has two guns, which, by the way, Daredevil doesn't ever use guns. I can't remember if it's Daredevil or Echo. Somebody shoots him in the eye with two guns. It's in that same series, so it's one of the two. Blows his head out, like literally puts both guns point blank to his eyes, shoots him in the face. And the follow-up comic to that, he's like in the gutter, he's in the sewer. He like feeds himself rats to survive, and then re-emerges as the Kingpin with both eyes fine. Right? They do the exact same thing. And I'm like, I remember
it's comic accurate, Jarret. Yeah, they're just following the comics. Come on.
I can't remember if it was on the podcast or not. If it is, somebody go back and find the clip. But I said, like, I hope to God that like him getting shot in the face isn't like hand waved away somehow, because that is my biggest pet peeve in the comics. Is he's just like, psych, I ate a rat and I'm fine.
Must have been a mutant rat. There was some green ooze down there, and he grew back his eyes or something.
They did this in the TV series though, like exactly what you said. He's like got a minor like burn / bruise,
little red spot there.
He's like, I live, I'm fine.
he just throws some makeup on there, and like you wouldn't even notice. Yeah, it's fine.
So unhinged. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah. So that is wild. I mean, like, hey, I'm happy we're getting Vincent D'Onofrio back. So like, I'm not gonna make a big stink and complain about it.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it was annoying.
And he was
That-
Kingpin again, which we like. We kind of glazed over that, but it wasn't the weird Kingpin that we
Yeah,
got in Hawkeye. It was
right.
like a
Yeah, we
legit
got like
Kingpin.
a almost different character Kingpin in the Hawkeye series than from the Daredevil series. But yeah, he definitely had Daredevil vibes in this one. He was way more serious.
Sinister.
He seemed like unhinged in
Yeah.
Hawkeye for almost no reason.
Right.
Like Wilson Fisk can get unhinged, but there's always a reason behind it. Like
Yeah.
he's got the mind of like he's thinking three
He's
steps
always
ahead.
in control.
Yeah,
Which he
yeah,
was
he's
not
always
in
in
Hawkeye.
control. And in Hawkeye, it was like, nah, this dude's not in
Yeah.
control. He's off his rocker, and he's got this Hawaiian shirt on, just going nuts. You know,
Which is
just-
okay. I love to. So that's a Spider-Man callback, which I
Yeah.
love. That's like one of my favorite Kingpin. Like, you know, but it was
It
like
is a
he
great
put on the
callback.
Hawaiian shirt and he's like, "Just kidding. This is all a vacation." He like
I'm on vacation from actually being Kingpin.
he
I'm
turned
just
into
like,
the fourth Stooge and just like lost all of his. That was so unhinged, so
gosh,
wild.
yeah. But yeah, it was nice to see him return to form as like a pretty serious, threatening Kingpin in this series. So that was nice. You did mention Jarret, so you've read a lot of Echo. They did change. Okay, back up a little bit. So we get in the very first episode, we kind of get a little backstory about the. Now I'm blanking
Choctaw.
on the tribe, Choctaw tribe, that she is from, and like how they've had this power that's kind of like handed down through women in their tribe, like through generations and stuff like that. So she inherits this power, and the final episode is, you know, about her like embracing and using that power, blah, 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 all that stuff. So in this series, they basically give her powers, which is different
Like
from the
actual
comics.
superpowers, yeah.
Yeah, actual superpowers. So can you speak to, since you are I know you probably wouldn't consider yourself an Echo expert, but
Right.
like you're more of an Echo expert than pretty much anybody else that we know for sure, and probably anybody else that we interact with online. So
Yeah, that's maybe fair.
as the Echo
That's
expert,
the one guy.
what did you think about the differences between her comic book character and how they portrayed her in the MCU?
Yeah, so Maya Lopez in the comics is more she's still indigenous, but she's more like Central American, Aztec or Mayan. I can't remember which. And so there is like more of a focus on like Lopez and the sort of like Hispanic indigenous heritage there. And so the fact that they set this in the continental US and made her Choctaw was really cool. And on top of that, I feel like there's sort of there's a need to like justify supernatural things in the MCU. And I like it because it got a little bit of the indigenous history there, and they got to talk about the folklore of like Choctaw's view on creation, which was really cool. But I also don't necessarily like that they had to give her superpowers. I think they still could have gotten the like spiritual and folklore aspect of it without being like, okay, now her hands glow and she has super strength. Because in the comics, and this is one of the things that I really liked about her character, is that like she is a regular person who happens to be deaf. And I think that speaks more to, I'm going to get a bit on a rabbit trail here, but one of the things that I love about Hawkeye is like he's a regular dude, right? At the end of the day, he does not have superpowers. He's not superhuman. He just happens to be a regular dude who's really good at shooting a bow and has some martial arts background. And Echo kind of lives in that same vein, right? Like she is a person who has a disability. She's differently abled, and in spite of that, she is able to do all these what would be considered superhuman things just as a normal person. And so the fact that they were like, just kidding, now also she has superpowers was a little frustrating. But in the comic books, her whole shtick is like, she's similar to the way that Taskmaster performs. And I'm not talking about the horrible one that we got in Black Widow. But in the comics, Taskmaster has this problem with his brain where he has like photographic eidetic memory, specifically for like how people move and how they fight. And it's kind of an interesting story arc because he ends up losing like personal memories, like his family and who he was, because his mind just retains so much knowledge about like how people fight. And she is the same way. And like a lot of her action scenes in the comic books are like she's seen Captain America fight, and so now she can fight like Captain America. Or like specifically when she fought Daredevil, as they're fighting, she can read his body language, and she is able to fight better than him at his own like fighting style, which is like boxing and mixed martial arts. And so to get away from that specifically and make her like superhuman was frustrating for me. But I like that they found a way to tie it in culturally. So I guess it's a
Yeah.
mixed bag.
Yeah. And so, speaking of the cultural aspect of it, the story here is that Maya goes back to
Her
her
hometown.
Choctaw, reservation hometown, and she basically is reconnecting with a lot of her family that she left behind when she went to New York City to be with Wilson Fisk, and it shows a lot of reservation life and stuff like that, and you have a cool, unique perspective as that you are married to a native, have native children, and you live on a reservation. So, do you feel like they portrayed everything well? Could you speak to that whole aspect of it?
Yeah, so it's interesting because like native cultures, obviously, like tribes are very different from one another culturally. Different languages, different like ways that we do things and stuff. And so um, it's always surprising to me seeing how familiar these things are. Like we've talked about Reservation Dogs at length and a bunch of these other like native led projects and native led movies, and you look at them, and obviously like there are differences, and um, an indigenous group on one end of the continent looks very different to an indigenous group on the other,
Mhm.
and yet there's this thread that like connects everything. And even in watching this, obviously I live in northeast Montana. I'm it's about as far as you can get from the south, but watching this felt so familiar and felt so much like what we experience here and what we see here. And even like the powwow looked like every powwow I've ever been to, with the tourists and all the
Mhm.
food vans lining up. And the grand entry looked the exact same as every grand entry I've been to. So it was really cool to see the way that they incorporated that. And obviously, like, they gave a special shout out not only during the production but even in the movie or in the TV show itself about the participation from the Choctaw Nation. And if you look at the cast and crew that's involved in this, like Chaskey Spencer, who plays the guy who owns the bowling alley, is from here. He's grew up and is enrolled in Fort Peck. And so you look at this all-star cast of indigenous actors and actresses, and it makes sense that they would do this justice. It's done so well. I
Mhm.
mean, like you're missing like Adam Beach and maybe a couple others, and you have like all the best who's who in Hollywood. I mean, Dallas Goldtooth was even in this for a scene. So
Yeah.
it was super cool to see like that indigenous representation on the rise, not just within Disney and specifically the series, but like I feel like Hollywood lately has kind of woken up to how powerful these stories are and how amazing they
Mhm.
are. And so yeah, it was cool to see the parallels that were drawn there. Like I talked about the folklore aspect and the Dakota creation story, and like what is told as like this is where we come from, is that the Dakota emerged from underground as like mud people, from these caves in the Black Hills, and the story is very similar to what we see play out in this Choctaw creation story in the series.
Mhm.
And so yeah, it's so cool to see like that parallel between the two.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned that we're seeing more of these stories in media. One
Yeah,
specifically that I think is mentionable for sure in this episode is the Kahori episode of What If
right.
that just dropped weeks before Echo. Like very similar kind of like creation story, I guess, and
Yep.
it's just really cool to see her highlighted in that series. So yeah, just really cool that they're highlighting these native stories, and it's good that they're getting the recognition because yeah, they needed to be highlighted. They're awesome stories in general. So pretty cool.
We have like obviously Reservation Dogs, we have War Pony, we have this, the Kahori episode, and even like Lily Collins and the whole group that just absolutely smashed the box office with Killers of the Flower
Mhm.
Moon,
Yeah.
which I have thoughts on that movie, good and bad. But at the end of the day, I think it was really cool to see that representation. I will say, and we talked about, you and I specifically talked about this before. The one thing that irritated me is her like superhero costume at the end. Obviously, like they play it up big and they show the grandma making her regalia for this like event, and I I really wanted it to be actual regalia, right? Like when she was in the scene in the grand entry, the whole point was like she was going to blend in and she was going to be part of the grand entry, and the costume was amazing. It was beautiful. Don't get me wrong, but if I were to see that at a powwow, I would have no idea what was going on because it doesn't look like a traditional woman's regalia. It doesn't look like a jingle dress. She's not wearing a shawl. Like there's all these rules that go with the dances that I was like, man, it would have been cool to see that thing like beat it up or give her a shawl or give her all these other things. So I thought it was cool. I wish they would have gone a little further, but that's just my personal nitpick.
Yeah, and you mentioned previously when we talked that like it's either one or the other. Like you either go all out or you're like in jeans and a t-shirt there. Right. You know, like so she was kind of like in the middle and it just was like didn't really fit in.
That's the thing is like when you go to a grand entry for a powwow, you'll see people who are there for like honoring a loved one or somebody who passed away, or they're presenting a star quilt for something or whatever. So you'll see a lot of people who are just in street clothes, who are not dancers. They're not part of the, you know, they're not going to compete. They're not wearing regalia. And then obviously you'll see all the dancers who are competing and like people who are bearing the flags and presenting and all that. And those people are all dressed up. And so the fact that she was like somewhere in the middle, she's supposed to be blending in, but like, dude, she super sticks out.
Yeah, she's sticking out. Yeah.
And I get like jingle dresses specifically are called jingle dresses because they're covered head to toe in like they have bells all over and they're super loud. Some people put like elk teeth on them so they click as they walk, but like they're not quiet. So I understand you couldn't do a jingle dress, but like there are a million other options you could have gone with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of, you know, cool cultural nods and stuff like that. Maybe a few things that, you know, didn't fit in quite as could have done differently for sure. But overall, I mean, how do you feel like they handled that the cultural aspect of it?
I think all that was spot on. Like the fact that they were brave enough to incorporate it and allow this to be like an indigenous story for indigenous people by indigenous people was really cool. And like the acting in this was phenomenal. The guy who played what was his name? Biscuit. Is that right? Was it Biscuits?
Biscuits, yeah. Biscuits
was killing me. Like that dude nailed it.
That dude is hilarious.
Again,
Cody Lightning.
Oh my gosh, that dude killed it. Devery Jacobs, who is like a superstar on the rise from Reservation Dogs. Chaske Spencer, who again is from here and a phenomenal dude. He is killing it in everything that he's in. He came from what was this? He came from Twilight. I think Twilight was like his first big break.
Really? Okay.
And I've seen those movies and I've seen his acting in those movies. And I'm not saying it's his fault because like those movies are bad. If like what's the Pattinson? Who's the Batman guy? I want to say Edward, but that's not his name. What's his first name? Robert Pattinson.
Oh yeah. Sorry. I thought talking about the character.
So Robert Pattinson is a phenomenal actor, and like even he had a hard time in those movies. So watching everything post that about Chaske Spencer, dude killed it. Alekwa Cox, always phenomenal. Kunchi or Tentu Cardinal, phenomenal. Who else am I missing? It's a pretty
Graham Greene,
who's in everything.
Yeah,
Zane McLaren obviously like has a couple parts in there. He's the dad. So yeah, it's cool to see like these indigenous actors and actresses really shine, and it's amazing. It's so cool for me to see like the connections that are made to my small community of like 900 people in Nowhere, Montana.
So cool.
Like we talked about, Amber Mid-Thunder's from here, Chaske Spencer's from here, Janae Collins, who was in Killers of the Flower Moon, she's one of the sisters. She grew up with my brothers-in-law, so like, yeah, crazy all the like lines that are drawn.
Right. Pretty awesome. And you mentioned Alekwa Cox. I mean, we haven't talked about her probably enough because she is the reason this series works. Like she just knocked this one out of the park. I think she and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think her acting in Hawkeye was the first time she's ever acted. So the fact that she's learning all this on the fly is phenomenal.
to my understanding, and I don't remember where I read this or what article it was in, so I apologize if I get any of the details wrong, because Hawkeye's what, like 2 years out now? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
But I remember when she was announced, there was like an article or an interview or something that basically said like there was a casting call that was put out for Indigenous actors and actresses, which I've seen personally, like when they put those out, because we've tried to sign my brother-in-law up for him a few times, but and so somebody encouraged her because they were looking for specifically a Indigenous actress who was also deaf. And I can't remember exactly how the story went, but I remember either her or somebody else was like concerned that her amputation would be a problem, like her prosthetic, and they had
Plays perfectly
seen
into
like her
it.
casting call and like her work, and immediately was a non-issue. And like watching her act, you can see why, right? And having the crux of a show be around a deaf actor or actress, I feel like is something that is, one, not done enough, but also like you have to do it correctly. And I think the way that they did this in this, and obviously like I have no stake in the game. I'm not deaf. I don't struggle with any sort of like differently abled things, but I thought it was phenomenally well done. And I think a big credit to that was her specifically acting. Like there was not a moment that went by that she wasn't selling that character. I was never pulled out of the scene.
Right. I feel the same way. I think the reason this series works is because of her portrayal and her acting chops, which again, she's learning on the fly, because I just looked her up on IMDb, and Hawkeye and Echo are her only acting credits.
Yeah.
So like the fact that she already has this natural acting ability, like she's gonna be around for a while. She's gonna be cast in other projects. So
it's cool to see like
amazing.
the old guard. Zane McLaren's in everything, right? Like he was in Westworld. He's been in a million things, and the rest of that cast has been around. And then you see people like Devery Jacobs and Aleko Cox who are killing it. And I think it's it's like really, I don't want to say a passing of the torch, because obviously those older actresses and actors aren't going
Still
anywhere
around.
anytime soon.
Right.
But it's nice to see how much they've benefited from the wisdom of the older generations, and like the success that they've seen being passed on to these up and coming actors and actresses who are like killing it, absolutely killing it.
Yeah, definitely. I think finale was okay.
It was a letdown.
Definitely,
Let's not.
It was.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a disaster, though. That's the thing. Like with all of these Marvel shows, so much gets packed into the finales.
Yeah.
And I think the pacing, even though it was 5 episodes and it could have used 2 more or 3 more episodes to just string out that storyline, like as we mentioned on every single Disney Plus show, could benefit the show. This episode, or the finale of Echo, in comparison to all the other Disney Plus finales, was probably one of the better ones.
It was good.
I feel like.
I think my frustration is there was so much going for it that if they would have like given it the proper time and the proper energy, it wouldn't have been good. It would have been great. And I think that's my frustration with this. It's not that it was bad, because it wasn't. It's that there was so much there that they just left behind.
Yeah.
And again,
I definitely get that. But if we're comparing, it was solid. It was fine. It didn't do anything crazy or out of the box. Pretty much what they, advertised leading up to it, which, obviously we didn't know before the show that she was going to get superpowers and stuff like that. But like, I mean, leading up to it, basically everything that we thought was going to happen pretty much happened. The one thing I will say, though, is, and I hate to be like a negative, like Nancy or whatever, but like the post-credit scene was the thing that got me the most excited watching this entire show, which is a little sad to say, but that's not to say that the show was bad. It just wasn't a show that I was like jumping up in my chair, like, yes, this is the best part ever. Like, this is amazing. But that post-credit scene where we find out that Wilson Fisk is probably going to be running for mayor,
Right.
that was cool.
Yeah.
Which is a reference to a comic storyline, I believe, Devil's Reign.
Yep.
Devil's Reign. And it's
phenomenal story.
It's phenomenal that we're getting these stories from the amazing comics brought into the running MCU.
I think this is going to be
Wilson Fisk as a mayor is going to be it's going to be so cool.
I think Daredevil Born Again is going to lead into something big on like the street level Marvel.
Yes.
The problem is with the mixed success of the Disney Plus shows, I don't know if we're going to make it that far, so we'll see.
We'll see. Disney Plus. Daredevil Born Again is currently in production. There's been crap ton of set photos and stuff floating around in the internet. So if you're wanting to avoid that, just stay off of Twitter.
It's all being
just
spoiled.
Just don't do it because it's all over the place right now. But it is currently in production. They've reworked it many times at this point. Who knows what we're gonna get with Daredevil Born Again, man? If we get any semblance of Netflix Daredevil, I'll be happy. There's basically no chance in my mind that it can live up to Daredevil Netflix. Because
make it TVMA, you cowards.
yeah. I mean, it will be TVMA. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if they've announced that or not, but like. If it's not TVMA, it has zero chance.
Right.
It's not going to make an impact.
I want to say one thing. I know we're moving on from Echo, but one thing before we close the book. And like this killed me with Hawkeye because I've been begging this forever. I wanted one episode, just one episode, where either you cannot hear at all, or like even the lowest, like slightly muffled noise where you just can't make out what people are saying. Right. Just once, I want somebody to step out of the bounds and like make it difficult and frustrating to watch the episode.
All right, Jarret, I'm getting it for you. It's right back here. Your soapbox.
I'm stepping on it.
Stepping on. Okay, so
freaking Hollywood cowards.
I read Matt Fraction's Hawkeye because of you, Jarret.
Yep.
And it is one of the best runs of any singular like titled hero comics I've ever read. It is phenomenal. Would absolutely recommend it to anybody listening that is into comics. But there is one issue which I'm going to let you talk about that they don't speak in because Hawkeye is deaf in the comics and he loses his hearing aid, if I'm remember correctly, in that issue.
So he normally wears cochlear implants. Yeah. And he gets the snot beat out of him by the tracksuit mafia. And it's him in the doctor's office with his brother, like basically trying to figure out like what happens next now that his hearing is not only like he lost his cochlear implants, but they like hurt his ears worse to where he's like deaf. As opposed to like difficult of hearing, hard of hearing or whatever. And that entire issue is seen from the viewpoint of like somebody who kind of remembers sign language ASL and is also trying to like piece together lip reading people's words. And it's beautifully done. If you read one issue of one comic, it has to be that one. And one of my favorite things about that comic, because like that's one of the things that drew me to Hawkeye again, is like not only is he just a guy, right? Doesn't have superpowers. He's not rich like Batman. He's not, he's literally just a dude. And he's trying to find out how to continue to be heroic in spite of like this thing that is putting an obstacle in front of him. And there's a quote from David Aja, who is the illustrator of the comic. And somebody had like enough people had hate mailed him basically saying like, this is dumb. I'm so frustrated. I just wanted to enjoy this comic and I can't because I don't know what the characters are saying. And this was like a Twitter post or an interview or something. I can't remember where I saw it, but he basically said like, that's the point. Right. That's what inspired, like, this is what people have to deal with every single day. Yeah. And so I want you to watch an episode of Echo. I want you to watch an episode of Hawkeye and be frustrated because you're turning up the sound and it's not working. And characters have their backs to you and you can't see what they're saying. Right. Or like you don't have captions. I want you to watch one episode and be that frustrated because I think it says a lot.
Yeah. You mentioned that when we reviewed Hawkeye, and that would be phenomenal. Like that would be an episode of TV that would be
Everybody
nominated
would be
for
talking
Emmys.
about it,
Yeah,
and like,
it would be awesome.
yeah, I have and like, I'm getting off track here, but I have a lot of students who have problems like that, are very difficult seeing, hard of hearing, or deaf. I don't have any students who are like solely relying on ASL, but I have a lot who are hard of hearing and a lot who need glasses but don't have them. And to see somebody like struggle and overcome that, and not just like struggle and overcome it, but like just really succeed at everything that they can do in spite of whatever barriers are put in their way, is a story that I think not just resonates within Native communities, but like the world at large, because resiliency is something that we can all get behind. So yeah, you freaking cowards, just do it once for me.
Do it, come on. So for that reason, it is a little sad that we're probably not going to see Echo again, that with her own series or movie or anything like that.
Right.
I think we will probably see her in a very small like cameo capacity at some point. But yeah, it's pretty much over for her as far as her own self-titled projects, I feel like. So
yeah,
a little bit of a bummer. But overall, I think this series was very well done. What would you give this series, Jarret? What would you rate it?
I can't remember what I rated it last time, and this is what I love about you and me, is it kind of depends on what mode we're in. I, having rewatched it recently and rewatched Hawkeye alongside it, I think I give it a 5.5. No, I give it a 5 out of 6 actually. And I think the one that is detracting it from it has nothing to do with the writing, has nothing to do with the actors. I think it has a lot to do with pacing. The only writing thing that I don't like, again, is like nothing makes sense with Kingpin. How is he still alive, let alone looking as good as he does? But
yeah, right. The best, he's got the best plastic surgeons money can buy, apparently.
I mean, like, dude got shot point blank and he has no.
Not to mention the best doctors that
Yeah.
sewed his brain together or something. I don't know. I don't know what they did. They did something to him and he looks great.
Okay, just my quick guess is like at one point I think they were gonna make him a scroll, and then they're like, no, we're doing too much of that, maybe not. And then they're like, oh, I guess he's okay. I don't know.
That just makes me think of like the huge missed opportunity that Secret Invasion was, because they could have done so many cool things.
I know
in the MCU, and like this, if you watch Secret Invasion in and of itself, it's really not that bad of a show.
It is,
but like some people might think I still gave it a 4.5 out of 6, and I'll stand by that. But like, for the huge disappointment that it was to the broad spectrum of the MCU,
don't watch this series. If you really like, if you're curious at all about Secret Invasion, go rent the comic book. Go to your library.
You can buy the comic book, because the comic book is phenomenal. If you're gonna read an event comic, Secret Invasion is up there with one of the best events like ever.
Probably top 3.
Yeah,
off of my head right now, it's up there, top 5 for sure.
Yeah, you definitely need to read that one, and
skip the TV show. Just read.
Just don't watch the TV show. It's a major disappointment in comparison to the comic series. So, anyways, I digress. We're going to stop talking about that now. I'd agree with you. I give Echo a 5 out of 6. I thought it was a phenomenal series. I don't think I have as much issue with the pacing. I feel like I look at it in comparison to all these other Disney Plus shows.
Sure.
And it really doesn't have worse pacing than these other shows, because Echo, I think, didn't have quite the same story to tell as a lot of these other ones did. I feel like they adequately told the story, whereas a lot of these other shows, man, they tried to pack so much crap into these other shows, so the pacing was just
bizarre, just
super messed up. So like Echo, I don't think was quite as bad. It still definitely had its issues. I think there was one fight scene that I was a little disappointed in, and it was the Daredevil fight scene. Like, love that we got Daredevil, but like, that fight looked so choreographed, and
it's hard to compare that side by side with a good Daredevil fight scene, which was the hallway scene, and then a really good Echo fight scene, which was the bowling alley.
Yeah, the bowling alley scene was great.
The roller rink.
Roller rink, yeah. I knew what you're talking about. Yeah, the roller rink scene. But that scene was great. Like
it was so good compared to the Daredevil fight.
Yeah, you felt the emotion. Everything looked real, and it just the Daredevil one just looked so rehearsed that it just I don't know. It didn't feel like it was real. So yeah, couple things that I was not crazy about this series with, but like overall, it was among the Disney Plus shows too. It's definitely middle of the road, like maybe a little bit higher than middle of the road for me as far as the Disney Plus shows go. So yeah, I really loved it. 5 out of 6. Definitely worth a watch. I mean, like you have to watch this. This is getting to the point where like us Marvel fans are gonna watch everything, right? Like we're gonna watch this.
Yeah.
But like like you said, superhero fatigue, whether you like that term or not, it's a thing. Like the general public is not watching these shows anymore because they probably watch WandaVision. Maybe they watch Falcon and Winter Soldier, but after that, like I feel like they were dropping off pretty quickly because these series really are all kind of the same show about different characters. So this one, it was a solid show. It kind of really did tell the same story. It told it a little better than a lot of these series.
If you're interested in indigenous communities, I would say watch this for that alone to see like what does a contemporary small town reservation look like, and what would a superhero from that community look like.
Yeah,
but beyond that, it is just another kind of blasé Disney Plus show.
Yep. And we're looking forward obviously to seeing Wilson Fisk in Daredevil Born Again, and probably in the broader scope of the MCU with him potentially becoming mayor. So we'll see where that leads to. And obviously we're getting Daredevil back in Daredevil Born Again.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, like you mentioned that we're probably going to get a little bit more focus on the street level of the MCU with Daredevil Born Again, obviously, but with like Wilson Fisk being mayor, obviously that's going to be put more emphasis on New York City and not like saving the world in a general sense. So and I think that's great because street level street level Marvel is phenomenal. So hey, we get some Spider-Man mixed in with Daredevil for some street level stuff in the MCU. I'm 100% down. Like,
I think if you were to like make generalizations about Marvel in the same way that we do with DC, I think if you were to actually rank it, in my opinion, or at least like the way I read comics, is like X-Men is always number one for me, even though like they get pretty rough and some of them are way better than others. And then number 2 above Avengers, above like Celestial Marvel, above even like the supernatural stuff, is always like street level. Moon Knight street level, Spider-Man most of the time, believe it or not, is street level. And so I think a lot of the good stories live there. Even like some of the supernatural stuff, like not Devil's Reign, Shadowland, street level, right? That's Daredevil and his whole crew. So yeah, I'm excited to see what they could do with that.
Yeah, a lot of cool things to look forward to, and I feel like we are getting more spread out as well. We're only getting Deadpool 3 as an official MCU release this year. I think that's going to help the MCU as well, and just like the general draw to like Deadpool 3 is going to make a buttload of money. Like we've been kind of talking about how the Marvels and a lot of those DC movies did not do well at the box office, which not doing well
is still pretty good.
Is still pretty good as far as like, movies go, blockbusters go, stuff like that. But like, hey, they're not making $1 billion. I feel like Deadpool 3 might be in that category. It might not make it's probably not going to make $1 billion, but it's going to do pretty well because people are going to come to see Hugh Jackman as Wolverine.
I think if you were to encompass like all the DC and Marvel products of the last year, and you look at something like Guardians 3 versus like almost every DC movie that came out last year and Marvel's, I think if you look at the success of Guardians 3 and everything that went on with the SAG-AFTRA strike, I think people have to stop, take a deep breath, and really invest in making not good quote unquote superhero movies, but like good movies.
Good movies,
right?
Yeah,
like Daredevil,
exactly.
Guardians 3 is just a good movie. Like it's not a good for a superhero movie. It is a good movie.
It is a good movie, but I will say, and I absolutely adored Guardians 3. Is it my favorite movie of 2023? No, it's not my favorite, but it's definitely high on my top 6 list, which we're going to be doing. Stanley's coming up pretty soon. Stay tuned for that. But I will say it suffers from Marvel. I don't know. It's this Marvel fatigue is not a good term for it, but like if you don't watch most of the Avengers movies, all of the Guardians movies, you will not understand a single thing that happens in Guardians 3.
Sure.
But it is such a good movie that like watching all of those previous movies leading up to it, it's totally worth it. Because I bawled my way through Guardians 3 because of the emotional impact that those characters had on me. It was almost like going back to Endgame. Like in Endgame, those original 6 Avengers had such a huge impact on us in the broad scope of the MCU that I cried a good chunk of Endgame because of the emotional impact that those characters had on me. And that's what Guardians 3 was. It was like the end game of was it in phase 4?
Yes.
Phase 5, technically? I don't know. What's phase 5 now?
It's all mud in the water to me now, bud.
Honestly, post Endgame, I don't even know what's happening anymore. Whatever phase it's in, but like it was the end game of all of the post Endgame Marvel projects, basically. Like
convoluted way to say that, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, it had all the emotional impact that all of the other phase 4 projects have not had.
Yeah, it carried the weight of that whole,
for sure. But yeah, it did still have a lot of homework that you had to do to get to that impact. But yeah, a lot of cool things to look forward to in the MCU. But thankfully, I think we're hopefully course correcting, getting less projects muddled in there. But Deadpool 3 is the next big thing coming. Unless, it's not MCU, but if we're counting Madam Web as a Marvel project, then
I don't know what's going on with that. It's such a have you seen? Okay, we're going long, but I guess we have to at this point. Have you seen the press circuit for that? And it's how disinterested all of the actresses are in this movie.
See, no, I actually think the opposite. Like they actually think that this is
really.
It seems like they think this is a good movie, and I'm like.
I'm watching
how?
How? Yeah. The vibes for this are not there.
The trailers and the promos that they've put out for this
are so awful.
God awful. Like CW level bad special effects.
Yeah.
And look, hey, I love the CW shows as much as anybody else, but you can't watch those shows and tell me that they had the best special effects that money could buy. Like they're just not there. And it's a TV show that it's fine. But this is a movie we're talking about now. This is
Black Widow level.
Full, like 100. I don't know what the budget is. I'm assuming this is like $150 million budget level movie that we're talking about. And I made a TikTok about this, but like in one of those promos, Ezekiel Sims, the Spider-Man-esque figure in this, swings down and then blows up like in a special effects explosion.
Yeah.
I watched that and I was like,
this looks like a Snapchat filter.
Are we serious now?
Yeah.
Are we serious? Is this a satirical movie? Is this a parody? I don't know. I can't tell at this point. So it might be a parody.
This is my favorite thing is everybody is asking, what is her name? What's the Dakota? It's not Dakota.
Dakota Johnson.
Dakota Johnson. They're asking her what this has to do with the MCU and what this has to do with Spider-Man. And my favorite thing is they keep saying the same line, which is this is not a Spider-Man movie. And I'm like, but you're trying really hard to make it look like a bad Spider-Man movie.
You sure about that? You sure about that?
Ezekiel Sims comes swinging in a black and purple
right. Also, from all of the clips that we've gotten from the actresses talking about this movie, it seems like they don't understand that this is not a part of the MCU.
Right.
It seems like they are fuzzy on the fact that this is Sony Sony's like Marvel universe or whatever they're calling it nowadays.
Well, that's my favorite thing is they're pitching it as though it were a Marvel superhero movie.
Right.
But then anytime anyone asks them about Spider-Man, they're like, has nothing to do with Spider-Man. I don't know, dude. It's freaking Madam Web. I don't know.
This is going to be a terrible movie, but I'm almost like excited to see it. Just to see how bad.
This is my Morbius. Do you know how like everybody was so excited for Morbius just to see how much of a train wreck it was? Right. It's that for me.
Same. Honestly, I'm actually like legitimately excited to see this and see how bad. I might go to the movie theater and
when does this come? When does Madam Web come out?
It's coming out this month in February.
Oh, dang it! No, because I was hoping I'd be in Minnesota for this, and we could just you and me. Oh my
gosh, that'd be amazing. Okay, we're really getting way off track here. Check out the Infinity Bros at theinfinitybros.com or on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and soon to be Drip. We already talked about that at the beginning of the show, but yeah. Going to be a lot of cool content coming from Infinity Bro Robbie moving forward with Drip and doing some rip and ship MTG stuff. So
our YouTube is going to get some love here soon in a big project that we've been working on. Robbie specifically has been putting in a lot of effort into getting like spell table stuff out, including hopefully soon a all Infinity Bros spell table episode that we're going to put some heavy editing into. And then again, I talked about the Fallout stuff. So yeah, pay attention to that.
Links will be in the show notes. Jarret, thank you so much for joining me today. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, dude, I love unhinged rambling with you. It is like one of my favorite things of all time.
Like, so we're sitting at 2 hours and 8 minutes right now. Probably 50 minutes of that is like directed show review. And the rest of it is literally just us rambling about random junk.
Yeah. I'm a hummingbird. That's all it is. So stop talking. If I stop freaking out, I'm going to die.
Thank you, Jarret. It has been a pleasure. Wherever you're listening, however you're listening, thank you so much for making us a part of your podcasting experience. We love you 3000. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Infinity Bros podcast. You can find the Infinity Bros on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, and YouTube at the Infinity Bros. You can also check out our website at theinfinitybros.com for links, reviews, and sweet merch. Feel free to send listener feedback via social media or email at infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com.